In the harsh Texas frontier, a widow's act of mercy toward a dying Comanche girl defied everything she'd been taught. But nothing could prepare her for the 100 painted warriors who appeared at dawn, led by a man whose cold eyes promised judgment.
She needed help. Whatever happened between our peoples, she's not to blame.
Why should I believe a white woman would help Comanche?
She stood her ground when others would have fled. He came seeking vengeance, but found something unexpected, a woman whose courage matched his own. As drought ravaged the land and town, whispers turned to threats. Two souls from warring worlds discovered the most dangerous territory of all was the distance between their hearts.
I'm not taking sides. I'm just trying to find a way forward that doesn't involve more killing.
The spirits guided my sister to your door for a reason, Claire McAllister. Perhaps they are wiser than we know.
When bullets fly and loyalties are tested, will a woman brave enough to defend her enemy become strong enough to love him? And can a proud warrior find peace in the arms of someone he was taught to hate? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The sun beat down hard on Claire McAllister's back as she drove the last fence post into the dry Texas soil. Sweat dripped from her forehead and she wiped it away with the back of her hand. At 29, her face already showed lines that hadn't been there a year ago before Tom was killed. "That should hold you, devils," she muttered to the small herd of cattle grazing nearby. The fence had been broken for days, and she couldn't afford to lose even one more head. Claire picked up her tools and headed back to the cabin. The modest homestead sat alone on the vast prairie, the nearest neighbor 5 miles away, the town of Broken Creek a half-day's ride. Just how she wanted it these days. Inside the cabin, she poured water from a pitcher into a basin and splashed her face. The cool water felt good against her skin, burned by the relentless Texas sun. She caught her reflection in the small mirror hanging on the wall. Her once bright blue eyes now looked dull, her brown hair pulled back in a practical braid. "You're turning into an old maid, Claire McAllister," she said to herself. She moved to the fireplace and stirred the stew that had been simmering since morning. Tom had always said her beef stew was the best in the county. The thought of him sent a familiar pain through her chest. 1 year gone, and it still hurt like it happened yesterday. A knock at the door startled her. Visitors were rare out here. "Claire, you in there?" She recognized Sheriff Dan Wilson's voice and sighed. Opening the door, she found the aging lawman standing on her porch, hat in hand. "Afternoon, Sheriff. What brings you all the way out here?" "Just checking on you, Claire. Folks in town are worried." Claire crossed her arms. "I don't need looking after." The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Been a year since Tom passed. People think you shouldn't be out here alone. The Jenkins boy is sweet on you. His father's got the biggest spread in the county." "I'm not interested in the Jenkins boy or his father's spread." Claire cut him off. "This is my home. Tom and I built it together." "Tom's gone, Claire. Killed by those savages. He wouldn't want you living out here by yourself, vulnerable to—" "Tom was killed because of a range war that white men started," Claire said sharply. "And I'm not vulnerable. I can shoot better than most men in Broken Creek." The sheriff sighed. "I'm just delivering the message. Reverend Parker says you haven't been to church in months. People talk." "Let them talk," Claire said, her voice cold. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have chores to finish before dark." After the sheriff left, Claire sat on the porch steps, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The endless prairie stretched before her, golden in the late afternoon light. In the distance, storm clouds gathered, promising rain that probably wouldn't come. The land had been dry for months. "We'll make it, Tom," she whispered to the wind. "I'll keep our dream alive." That night, the wind picked up, howling around the cabin like a wounded animal. Claire lay in bed, listening to the familiar sounds of her home creaking and settling. Sleep came in fits and starts, dreams of Tom's smile fading into nightmares of gunshots and blood-soaked earth. She woke before dawn, as was her habit. The air felt different, cooler, with the smell of dust and something else. Claire dressed quickly and went outside to check on the animals. The first hints of sunrise painted the eastern sky as she fed the chickens and milked her cow. The 2 horses nickered softly as she approached their pen. Everything seemed normal, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She was heading back to the cabin when she heard it. A soft moan, almost lost in the morning breeze. Claire froze, her hand moving instinctively to the knife at her belt. The sound came again, from behind the barn. Cautiously, Claire moved toward it, knife drawn. As she rounded the corner, she stopped short. A girl lay crumpled on the ground, her thin body curled into itself like a wounded animal. Her dark hair was matted with dirt, her brown skin covered in dust. She wore a simple deerskin dress, decorated with beads that caught the early morning light. Claire knew immediately that the girl was Comanche. Her breath caught in her throat as memories flashed before her eyes. Tom's body, riddled with arrows, the stories the settlers told of raids and scalping, the warnings to shoot Indians on sight. The girl moaned again and tried to lift her head. Her eyes, fever bright, found Claire's for just a moment before closing again. Claire stood frozen, the knife heavy in her hand. Every instinct told her to back away, to get her rifle, to protect herself from the enemy. But something else, something deeper, wouldn't let her move. The girl couldn't be more than 16. Her ribs showed clearly through her skin, and her lips were cracked from dehydration. She was no threat, just a child, sick and starving. "Lord, help me," Claire whispered, putting her knife away. She bent down and gently touched the girl's forehead. It burned with fever. Making her decision, Claire carefully slid her arms under the girl's slight frame and lifted her. She was shockingly light, like picking up a half-empty sack of flour. "It's all right," Claire said softly, though she doubted the girl could understand her. "I've got you now." Inside the cabin, Claire laid the girl on the small sofa near the fireplace. She worked quickly, fetching water and clean cloths. The girl's breathing was shallow, her pulse rapid under Claire's fingers. As Claire cleaned the dirt from the girl's face, she was struck by how young she looked. Not much more than a child, lost and sick on the prairie. Whatever she was doing so far from her people, it couldn't justify leaving her to die. "You're going to be all right," Claire said, spooning water between the girl's cracked lips. "Just hold on." Throughout the day, Claire tended to the girl. She made broth from her stew and managed to get the girl to swallow a few spoonfuls. She bathed her face with cool water and laid damp cloths on her forehead to fight the fever. As evening approached, the girl's fever seemed to break. Her breathing became more regular, and some color returned to her cheeks. Claire sat beside her, exhausted but relieved. "Where am I?" The girl's voice, though weak, startled Claire. She hadn't expected her to speak English. "You're safe," Claire said. "I found you behind my barn this morning. You were very sick." The girl's dark eyes studied Claire warily. "You are a white woman." "Yes, my name is Claire McAllister. This is my ranch." The girl tried to sit up, but fell back weakly. "I must go. My people—" "You're too weak to go anywhere," Claire said firmly. "What's your name?" The girl was silent for a long moment, as if weighing whether to answer. Finally she said, "Naki." "Well, Naki, you need food and rest. Your people will have to wait." Claire brought a bowl of stew and helped Naki eat. The girl's hands trembled as she held the spoon, but her eyes never left Claire's face. "Why you helped me?" Naki asked when she had finished eating. "White people hate Comanche." Claire sighed and sat back in her chair. "Not all white people. Not me. Your husband hate Comanche?" The question hit Claire like a physical blow. "My husband is dead," she said flatly. Naki's eyes widened slightly. "Comanche kill him?" "Yes," Claire admitted. "But it was during a range war. Both sides did terrible things." Naki seemed to consider this. "My father, my mother, dead too. White soldiers." The simple statement hung in the air between them. Two orphans of the same endless conflict, sitting across from each other at Claire's table. "I'm sorry," Claire said, and meant it. Naki's eyes grew heavy as the food and warmth did their work. Claire helped her lie down again near the fire and covered her with a blanket. "Sleep now," Claire said. "You're safe here." As Naki drifted off to sleep, Claire sat watching her, wondering what twist of fate had brought this girl to her door and what consequences would follow. She knew harboring a Comanche, even a sick, helpless girl, could bring trouble from the townsfolk. But the thought of turning Naki away never crossed her mind. Outside, the wind continued to blow, carrying the scent of dust and sage across the prairie. Claire checked her rifle and placed it near the door before settling into her rocking chair for the night. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it. Morning came with a glow of pink and gold across the eastern sky. Claire, who had dozed fitfully in her chair, woke to find Naki already sitting up, looking stronger than the night before. "You stayed," Naki said, sounding surprised. "Of course I stayed. It's my house," Claire replied, stretching the stiffness from her back. "No, you stayed to watch me. You not trust Comanche girl in your house." Claire sighed. "I stayed because you were sick. I wanted to make sure you were all right." Naki's expression softened slightly. "I am better. The spirits sent me to good place." "What were you doing out here alone?" Claire asked as she stoked the fire. Naki hesitated before answering. "I was looking for herbs, for my people, many sick with fever. I walked too far, get weak." Claire nodded, though she suspected there was more to the story. "Well, you're welcome to stay until you're strong enough to travel." "My brother will look for me," Naki said. "Red Elk is great warrior, he will come." Something in the way she said it sent a chill down Claire's spine, but she pushed the feeling aside. "When he comes, I'll explain that I helped you. That I mean no harm." Naki didn't respond, but her doubtful expression spoke volumes. After breakfast, Claire needed to fetch water from the well. "I'll be right back," she told Naki, picking up the large kettle. Outside, the morning air was fresh and cool. Claire took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. Whatever happened, she had done the right thing, she was sure of it. But as she walked toward the well, something on the horizon caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a dust cloud from a cattle drive. Then she realized it wasn't moving like cattle. It was moving like riders, many riders. Claire shaded her eyes against the morning sun and felt her heart drop like a stone. The horizon was lined with mounted warriors. Even from this distance, she could see their painted faces, the feathers in their hair, the weapons in their hands. Dozens of them, maybe 100, forming a wide semicircle around her property. One rider moved forward, breaking from the line. Tall and straight-backed, he wore a headdress of eagle feathers and rode his horse with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle. Even without Naki's description, Claire would have known this was a chief or war leader. Red Elk had come for his sister, and in his eyes, as he drew close enough for Claire to see his face, was the cold, hard promise of judgment. Claire stood rooted to the spot, the kettle still in her hands. She thought of the rifle inside the cabin, out of reach. She thought of Naki, too weak to run. She thought of Tom, and how he had died defending this land, but mostly, she thought about how quickly life could change, how a simple act of kindness could lead to this moment, with death riding toward her across the prairie grass. The warriors advanced slowly, deliberately, their horses' hooves kicking up dust that glittered in the morning light. Claire raised her chin and waited. Whatever happened next, she would face it standing tall on the land she loved. The land that might soon drink her blood, just as it had drunk Tom's. Claire stood frozen as the Comanche warriors drew closer. The kettle slipped from her hands and clattered to the ground. Her mouth went dry, and her heart hammered in her chest, but she refused to run. Running would only make things worse. The warrior in the lead, Red Elk, raised his hand, and the entire group stopped about 50 yards from where she stood. The silence that followed was more frightening than any war cry. Red Elk urged his horse forward, approaching Claire alone. He was tall and powerfully built, with sharp features and eyes as black as coal. A long scar ran down the left side of his face. He wore a breastplate of bone and leather, and feathers adorned his long black hair. At his side hung a tomahawk, its blade gleaming in the morning sun. He stopped his horse just 10 feet from Claire and looked down at her. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes burned with barely contained rage. "Where is my sister?" he asked in perfect English, his voice deep and controlled. Claire swallowed hard. "She's inside. She was sick, dying. I found her yesterday and took her in." "You took her?" Red Elk's hand moved to his tomahawk. "No, not like that," Claire said quickly. "She collapsed near my barn. She was burning with fever. I brought her inside to help her." Red Elk's eyes narrowed. "White woman helps Comanche girl? Why should I believe this?" "Because it's the truth," Claire said, forcing strength into her voice. She's better now, but still weak. You can see for yourself. For a long moment, Red Elk studied her face, as if searching for deceit. Then he nodded once and called out to his warriors in his native tongue. 2 men dismounted and approached. "They will go inside first," Red Elk explained coldly. "If you have spoken truth, they will not harm you. If you lie—" He left the threat unfinished. Claire stepped aside, letting the 2 warriors pass. They entered her cabin, weapons ready. She held her breath, hoping Naki was awake and could explain. Minutes stretched like hours as Claire stood under Red Elk's watchful gaze. Behind him, the line of warriors waited, their faces painted for war. One false move, one misunderstanding, and they would descend upon her like wolves. Finally, the door opened. One of the warriors emerged and spoke rapidly to Red Elk. His expression changed slightly, surprise perhaps, or confusion. "It seems my sister confirms your story," Red Elk said. "But she is still coming with us." "Of course," Claire nodded, "but she needs rest and medicine. She's not strong enough to ride yet." Red Elk dismounted in one fluid motion. He towered over Claire, his presence intimidating despite the fact that he made no threatening moves. "I will see her now," he said, walking past Claire toward the cabin. Claire followed him inside, where she found Naki sitting up on the sofa, wrapped in the blanket Claire had given her. The girl's eyes lit up when she saw her brother. "Red Elk," she said, speaking in their language. He knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. They spoke rapidly, Naki gesturing occasionally toward Claire. Though Claire couldn't understand the words, she could see the concern in Red Elk's face, the relief in Naki's. After a few minutes, Red Elk turned to Claire. "My sister says you gave her food and medicine, that you were kind." "She needed help," Claire said simply. "I couldn't let her die." "Even though she is Comanche?" Red Elk's voice was skeptical. "Even though our people killed your husband?" Claire looked at Naki, then back at Red Elk. "She's just a girl. Whatever happened between our people, she's not to blame." Red Elk's expression remained unreadable, but something in his eyes shifted. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at his waiting warriors. "My sister is too weak to travel today," he said finally. "We will make camp nearby. Tomorrow, when she is stronger, we will take her home." Relief washed over Claire. "She's welcome to stay here tonight. There's plenty of food." Red Elk turned to face her. "You do not fear having Comanche in your home?" "I've already had one here since yesterday," Claire replied. "Besides, if you wanted me dead, I would be already." A ghost of a smile touched Red Elk's lips. There and gone so quickly, Claire almost missed it. He spoke again to the warrior who had remained inside. Then to Naki. "2 of my men will stay with my sister," he told Claire. "The rest will make camp by the creek." Claire nodded. It wasn't a request, and she knew better than to object. "There's stew in the pot, enough for everyone." Red Elk studied her for a moment longer, then strode out of the cabin. Claire watched through the window as he spoke to the waiting warriors. At his command, most of the group turned and rode toward the creek that ran along the eastern edge of Claire's property. 6 remained, including the 2 already inside. Claire turned back to Naki, who was watching her with curious eyes. "Your brother seems intense," Claire said, trying to smile. "Red Elk is great warrior," Naki replied proudly. "He protects our people. After white men kill his wife, he becomes harder." Claire's heart skipped. "His wife was killed." Naki nodded, her face solemn. "Settlers attack our village 2 summers ago. Many die. Red Elk's wife, my brother's other sisters, many children." She looked down at her hands. "Red Elk find me hiding. He saved me." Claire sat down heavily in her rocking chair. "I'm sorry, Naki, truly. You lose husband, I lose family. Same pain." Naki's simple words carried a wisdom beyond her years. Throughout the day, Claire moved carefully around her own home, aware of the watchful eyes of the 2 Comanche warriors who had stayed with Naki. They sat silently by the door, accepting the food Claire offered, but otherwise ignoring her. Naki slept for much of the afternoon, her body still fighting off the last of the fever. Claire busied herself with household chores. trying to maintain a sense of normalcy in this most abnormal situation. As evening approached, Claire heard horses outside. Looking through the window, she saw Red Elk returning with 2 other warriors. They carried fresh game, rabbits, and a small deer. When Red Elk entered the cabin, he nodded to Claire. "We bring food," he said, "to repay your kindness to my sister." "Thank you," Claire replied, genuinely surprised by the gesture. "I'll prepare it." While Claire skinned and cleaned the rabbits, she was aware of Red Elk sitting beside Naki, talking quietly. The girl looked better after her day of rest, her eyes brighter, her movements stronger. As darkness fell, more warriors arrived, building a fire in Claire's yard. The smell of cooking meat filled the air as they prepared their own meal. Claire cooked the rabbits Red Elk had brought, adding herbs from her small garden. When the food was ready, Claire served Naki first, then offered portions to Red Elk and the other warriors inside. They accepted with solemn nods. "So you cook well," Red Elk said after taking his first bite. It wasn't exactly praise, but Claire felt oddly pleased nonetheless. "My husband always said so," she replied, then immediately regretted mentioning Tom, but Red Elk showed no reaction. "Your husband fought against my people?" Claire nodded slowly. "He did, in the range war last year." "Why?" Red Elk asked, his dark eyes fixed on her face. Claire considered the question. "Because he believed this land was ours. Because other ranchers were fighting. Because that's what men do, I suppose." "And what do you believe?" Red Elk's question caught her off guard. "I believe..." Claire paused, searching for the right words. "I believe there's been enough fighting, enough death. I believe this land is big enough for all of us, if we could just stop killing each other over it." Red Elk's expression didn't change, but he held her gaze for a long moment before returning to his meal. Claire couldn't tell if her answer had pleased him or angered him. After dinner, Naki's fever returned. The girl began shivering despite the warmth of the fire, and her face flushed with heat. "The sickness comes back," Red Elk said, his voice tight with concern. Claire approached and touched Naki's forehead. "She's burning up again. I have herbs that might help." "White medicine?" Red Elk's tone was skeptical. "Some from the settlers. Some I learned from Mexican vaqueros who worked nearby. They know plants that grow in this region," Claire explained, already moving to gather what she needed. Red Elk stood in her way. "How do I know you won't poison her?" Claire met his gaze without flinching. "If I wanted to harm her, why would I have saved her in the first place? Why feed her, care for her all day yesterday when I was alone with her?" One of the older warriors, who had remained silent until now, spoke up in their language. Red Elk listened, then reluctantly stepped aside. "Yellow Hawk says you speak with honest tongue," Red Elk explained. "He says if you meant harm, the spirits would not have guided Naki to your door." Claire nodded gratefully to the older warrior, then set to work. She brewed a strong tea from willow bark to fight the fever, adding honey to make it palatable. While it steeped, she made a poultice of herbs to draw out the heat. Red Elk watched her every move, his face impassive but his eyes missing nothing. When Claire approached Naki with the tea, he tasted it first, then nodded for her to proceed. Claire helped Naki drink the bitter tea, then applied the poultice to her forehead and chest. "This should help break the fever," she explained, "but she needs to rest and stay warm." The night deepened around them. Outside, most of the warriors had returned to their camp by the creek, leaving only a few to keep watch. Inside, Red Elk and Yellow Hawk remained, along with the 2 warriors who had stayed all day. Claire offered blankets and indicated that the men could sleep on the floor. She would take the chair beside Naki. "You should rest in your bed," Red Elk said. "I will watch my sister." "I want to make sure her fever breaks," Claire insisted. "I can sleep here." Red Elk studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You have good heart, Claire McAllister." It was the first time he had used her name, and it startled her. "You know my name?" "I know many things about the white settlers in this territory," he replied, "including that your husband led men against my hunting party last summer." Claire felt a chill run down her spine. "Were you there? When Tom died?" Red Elk's face remained expressionless. "I was not." but I lost cousins in that fight." "I'm sorry," Claire said softly. "As am I," Red Elk replied, surprising her again. "Too many dead on both sides." They fell silent after that, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire crackled in the hearth. Naki slept fitfully, occasionally murmuring in her native tongue. Claire dozed in her chair, waking every hour to check on the girl and replace the poultice. Sometime in the darkest part of the night, Claire woke to find Red Elk watching her. He sat cross-legged on the floor, his back straight, his eyes reflecting the dying firelight. "You did not have to help her," he said quietly. "Most white women would have let her die, or killed her themselves." "I'm not most white women," Claire replied, her voice husky with sleep. "No," Red Elk agreed. "You are not." In the morning, Claire woke to find Naki sitting up, looking much improved. The girl's fever had broken during the night, and color had returned to her cheeks. She was talking animatedly with Red Elk in their language. "She is better," Red Elk said when he noticed Claire was awake. "Your medicine worked." "I'm glad," Claire said, stretching the stiffness from her neck. "She's strong." "Like her brother," Naki said with a small smile. Claire prepared a simple breakfast of cornbread and coffee. As they ate, she could sense a change in the atmosphere. The tension that had filled the cabin yesterday had eased somewhat. After breakfast, Red Elk stood. "We will leave today. Naki is strong enough now." Claire nodded, feeling an unexpected pang at the thought of them going. "Of course. She should be with her people." "Our village is 3 days' ride from here," Red Elk continued, "near the big bend in the river." Claire understood he was sharing information that could be valuable or dangerous, depending on how she used it. It was a small gesture of trust. "I hope she continues to recover," Claire said. "If the fever returns, the willow bark tea will help." Red Elk nodded. "I will remember." The warriors outside began preparing to leave, saddling horses and dousing fires. Yellow Hawk brought a small paint pony to the cabin for Naki. The girl walked out on her own, still moving slowly, but much steadier than the day before. Claire stood on her porch watching as Red Elk helped his sister mount the pony. Around them, the warriors prepared to depart, their faces still wary when they looked at Claire, but without the open hostility of yesterday. Red Elk approached Claire one last time. "You have shown kindness to my sister. This I will not forget." "Anyone would have done the same," Claire said. "No," Red Elk shook his head. "They would not. My people know this well." He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something, holding it out to Claire. "Take this." It was a small carving of an eagle, made from antler bone and polished to a warm glow. "It's beautiful," Claire said, taking it carefully. "Eagle sees far," Red Elk explained. "Watches over all below. If you ever need help, send this with a messenger to our village. I will come." Claire closed her fingers around the carving, touched by the unexpected gift. "Thank you." Red Elk mounted his horse in one smooth motion. "The spirits guided my sister to your door for a reason, Claire McAllister. Perhaps they are wiser than we know." With that, he turned his horse and rejoined his warriors. Naki raised her hand in farewell, and Claire returned the gesture. Then the entire group moved off across the prairie, a river of color and movement against the golden landscape. Claire watched until they disappeared over the horizon, the eagle carving warm in her palm. Only then did she realize she had been holding her breath. Inside the cabin, signs of her visitors remained, blankets on the floor, extra cups on the table. Claire moved around the small space, tidying up, trying to return to her normal routine. But she knew nothing would be quite the same again. A week passed. Claire went about her daily chores, feeding the animals, mending fences, tending her small garden. But her thoughts often drifted to Naki and Red Elk. She wondered how the girl was faring, whether the fever had returned, whether they had reached their village safely. Each night she placed the eagle carving on the small table beside her bed. Each morning, she touched it briefly before starting her day. It was a reminder that not everything was as simple as she had once believed. On the 8th day after the Comanche had left, Claire was chopping wood behind the cabin when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Her first thought was that Red Elk had returned, and she felt an unexpected flutter of anticipation. But as she rounded the cabin, axe still in hand, she saw Sheriff Wilson and 3 other men from town riding up to her homestead. Their faces were grim, their hands close to their weapons. "Afternoon, Claire," the sheriff said, touching the brim of his hat. "Need to have a word with you." Claire leaned on her axe, her heart sinking. "What about, Sheriff?" "Got a report from Jennings. Rides for the Bar J spread north of here. Says he saw a whole war party of Comanche around your place last week." The sheriff's eyes scanned the yard as if expecting to find evidence. "Says they were here for quite a spell." Claire kept her face neutral. "And what if they were?" The men exchanged glances. One of them, Bill Sanders, spat tobacco juice on the ground. "Comanche's been raiding all along the territory. Killed 3 settlers over by Willow Creek just last month." "They didn't harm me," Claire said calmly, "and they're gone now." "What did they want, Claire?" the sheriff pressed. "Why'd they come here?" Claire considered her options carefully. These men wouldn't understand about Naki, about the fragile trust that had formed between her and Red Elk. They'd see only enemies, savages to be feared and fought. "One of them was sick," she said finally. "They needed medicine. And you just gave it to them?" Sanders asked incredulously. "After what they did to Tom?" Claire's grip tightened on the axe handle. "I'm tired of the killing, Bill, aren't you?" "It's not about being tired," the sheriff interjected. "It's about safety. If the Comanche think they can just ride up to your door and get whatever they want, what's to stop them from doing worse next time?" "They didn't take anything I didn't freely give," Claire said, "and they brought game in return." "You broke bread with them?" Sanders looked disgusted. "Shared your table with the same devils that put arrows in your husband?" Claire felt anger rising in her chest. "My husband died in a war he chose to fight. I've made a different choice." The sheriff dismounted and approached Claire, his face concerned. "Listen, Claire, I understand you've been through a lot. Living out here alone, it's not natural for a woman. It's affecting your judgment." "My judgment is just fine, Sheriff," Claire said coldly. "Maybe you should come into town for a spell," he suggested. "Stay with the widow Jenkins, get some proper company." "I have all the company I need right here," Claire replied. "Now, if you gentlemen don't mind, I have work to finish before sundown." The sheriff sighed and put his hat back on. "Just be careful, Claire. Comanches can't be trusted. They're not like us." As the men rode away, Claire stood watching them, the axe still in her hand. They were wrong about the Comanche, she knew that now, but they were also dangerous in their ignorance. She would need to be careful. Inside the cabin, Claire took the eagle carving from beside her bed and held it to the light. The carved feathers caught the sunlight, making the piece seem almost alive in her hands. "Not like us," she repeated the sheriff's words. "Maybe that's a good thing." She placed the carving on the mantel above the fireplace, where she could see it from anywhere in the room. A reminder of promises made, of connections forged in the most unlikely circumstances. Outside, the wind picked up, bringing the scent of rain. Claire stepped onto her porch and looked toward the horizon. Dark clouds gathered in the west, promising the storm that had been building for days. But instead of going back inside, Claire sat down in her rocking chair and watched the storm approach. Something in her had changed. The fear that had been her constant companion since Tom's death had eased, replaced by a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. Whatever came next, rain, drought, townspeople, or Comanche, she would face it head-on. Just as she had faced Red Elk, standing her ground when running might have been easier. The first drops of rain began to fall, cool against her skin. Claire closed her eyes and lifted her face to the sky, letting the water wash over her like a blessing. For the first time in a year, she felt truly alive. 3 weeks passed since the Comanche warriors had left Claire's ranch. The summer heat bore down mercilessly on the Texas prairie, turning the grass brittle and brown. No rain had fallen since that brief shower the day the sheriff visited, and Claire watched the creek shrink to a trickle, worrying about her cattle and crops. She was up before dawn each day, working until sunset, determined to keep the ranch going despite the drought. The work kept her mind occupied, though her thoughts often strayed to Naki and Red Elk. She wondered how they were faring in this heat, whether their creek still ran, whether Naki had fully recovered. One evening, as Claire sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her hand moved instinctively to the rifle leaning against the wall beside her, but she didn't pick it up. Not yet. A lone rider appeared, silhouetted against the setting sun. Even at a distance, Claire recognized the straight-backed posture, the proud set of the head. Her heart quickened. Red Elk. He rode up to her cabin at an unhurried pace, as if visiting a neighbor rather than crossing dangerous territory. When he reached the yard, he dismounted in one fluid motion and stood looking at her, his face unreadable in the fading light. "You are well?" he asked, his deep voice carrying easily across the short distance between them. Claire nodded, rising from her chair. "I am. And Naki, she is strong again," Red Elk said, a hint of pride in his voice. "She speaks of you often, says you have fire in your heart." Claire smiled, pleased to hear the girl was well. "Would you like some water, for yourself and your horse?" Red Elk nodded. "The journey was long. The land is very dry." "Everywhere," Claire agreed, leading the way to the well. She drew up a bucket of cool water, and Red Elk let his horse drink first, before taking the dipper she offered. "You are alone still," Red Elk observed, looking around the quiet homestead. "I manage," Claire said, lifting her chin slightly. Red Elk studied her face for a moment. "Yes, you do." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, an acknowledgement of her strength. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. From most men, it would have been empty flattery. From Red Elk, it felt like genuine respect. "I have brought you something," he said, reaching into a leather pouch tied to his belt. He withdrew a small bundle wrapped in soft deerskin and held it out to her. Claire took it, curious. Unwrapping the deerskin, she found a necklace of polished stone beads, interspersed with tiny shells and 2 eagle feathers. "It's beautiful," she said softly, running her fingers over the smooth beads. "Naki made it for you," Red Elk explained. "The stones are from the river near our village. The shells from trading with tribes to the south. The feathers—" He paused. "The feathers are from my own headdress." Claire looked up at him, surprised. "I can't take these then. They must be valuable to you." "They are," Red Elk agreed. "That is why I give them." Claire didn't know what to say. Among her own people, such a gift would have clear implications, but she didn't know Comanche customs, didn't understand what this might mean to Red Elk. "Thank you," she said finally, slipping the necklace over her head. The beads felt cool against her skin. Red Elk watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "It suits you," he said simply. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with something Claire couldn't name. Then Red Elk looked toward the horizon where the last light was fading. "I must go," he said. "It is not safe for me to be seen near white settlements." "Because of the raids?" Claire asked. "The sheriff mentioned attacks near Willow Creek." Red Elk's face hardened. "Not my people. We have kept peace this season." He met her eyes directly. "I gave my word to the army captain at the fort. No raids while they discussed treaty." "I believe you," Claire said, and realized she did. Whatever else Red Elk might be, she didn't think he was a liar. He nodded once, as if her belief mattered to him. Then he mounted his horse with that same fluid grace that made it look effortless. "Perhaps I will return," he said, looking down at her, "to see that you are still well." "I'd like that," Claire replied, surprising herself with her honesty. Red Elk's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Until then, Claire McAllister." He spoke her name with care, as if it was something precious. Then he turned his horse and rode away, soon swallowed by the gathering darkness. Claire stood watching long after he'd disappeared, the necklace warm against her skin where her fingers touched it. Inside her cabin, Claire lit the lamp and examined the necklace more closely. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the pattern of beads complex and beautiful. Naki had clearly spent many hours on it. And the feathers. She gently touched one of the eagle feathers, thinking of what it must have meant for Red Elk to give these from his own headdress. She placed the necklace carefully beside the eagle carving on her bedside table, then prepared for bed. But sleep was slow to come. Her mind kept returning to Red Elk, his solemn face, his measured words, the the way he looked at her as if truly seeing her. It was foolish, she told herself. He was Comanche. His people had killed Tom. Her people had killed his wife. There was too much blood between them, too much history. And yet, the next day, Claire rode into town for supplies. She hadn't been to Broken Creek in nearly a month, and she needed flour, coffee, and ammunition. Normally, she dreaded these trips. The pitying looks, the not-so-subtle suggestions that she should sell the ranch, the matchmaking attempts from well-meaning townsfolk, all of it grated on her nerves. But today, she found herself humming as she loaded her wagon. She wore a clean dress, her hair freshly washed and braided. At the last moment, she slipped Naki's necklace over her head, tucking it beneath her high-necked blouse so only the cord was visible at her throat. The town was busier than usual when she arrived. A cattle drive had stopped nearby, and cowboys crowded the saloon and general store. Claire tied her wagon in front of Donovan's mercantile and went inside, nodding to familiar faces. "Well, look who's come down from the mountain," Margaret Donovan said, smiling warmly. The older woman had been kind to Claire since Tom's death, never pushing or prying. "Beginning to think you'd decided to become a hermit for good." "Just busy with the ranch," Claire replied, returning the smile. "Need to stock up before harvest time." As Claire gathered her supplies, she was aware of whispers and glances. News traveled fast in small towns, and Sheriff Wilson's visit to her ranch had obviously become common knowledge. She was examining a bolt of fabric when a shadow fell across the counter. Looking up, she found James Jenkins standing beside her, hat in hand. At 35, he was the son of the wealthiest rancher in the county, and had been making his interest in Claire known since shortly after Tom's funeral. "Miss Claire," he said, nodding politely. "Good to see you in town." "Mr. Jenkins," Claire replied coolly. She had never encouraged his attention, but he persisted nonetheless. "Pa and I were just talking about you," he continued, oblivious to her tone. "With this drought getting worse, must be hard managing that place all by yourself." "I manage," Claire said, the same word she'd used with Red Elk, but lacking the warmth she'd felt then. "Course you do," Jenkins said quickly, "but a woman alone and with Indians causing trouble all over the territory." Claire felt her temper rising. "Have you had trouble at your ranch, Mr. Jenkins?" He blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. "Well, no, but..." "Neither have I," Claire cut him off. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to finish my shopping." Jenkins' face flushed. "I heard different," he said, lowering his voice. "Heard you had a whole war party at your place. Heard you gave them medicine and food." The store had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now. "Did Sheriff Wilson share that with the whole town?" Claire asked, keeping her voice steady despite her anger. "People have a right to know," Jenkins insisted. "If you're harboring hostiles..." "I helped a sick girl," Claire interrupted. "She happened to be Comanche, and her people left peacefully. End of story." Jenkins shook his head. "It's not that simple, Miss Claire. Folks are worried. You're putting yourself at risk, maybe the whole settlement." "By showing basic human decency?" Claire demanded. "The girl was dying. What would you have had me do? Leave her to the coyotes?" "I would have put a bullet in her and been done with it," came a harsh voice from behind her. Claire turned to see Bill Sanders leaning against the doorframe, his face twisted with hatred. "Only good Indians a dead Indian." "That's enough, Bill," Margaret Donovan said sharply. "Not in my store." "It's the truth," Sanders insisted. "Ask Tom McAllister if it ain't." "Oh wait, you can't..." "'Cause he's dead. Killed by the same savages she's making friends with." Claire felt as though she'd been slapped. The mention of Tom's name in this context made her stomach churn. "My husband would never have left a defenseless girl to die, no matter her color," Claire said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He was a better man than that." "Your husband knew what those devils were capable of," Sanders spat. "He died trying to protect this territory from them." "He died in a range war that both sides helped start," Claire retorted. "And now he's gone, and so is half the Comanche village that used to be by the river. Enough death on both sides, don't you think?" The store had gone deathly quiet. Claire realized she was trembling, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Margaret Donovan broke the silence. "I think we all need to calm down. Claire, let me finish gathering your order." The older woman gave Sanders a hard look. "Bill, I believe you were just leaving." Sanders pushed away from the doorframe, glaring at Claire. "You watch yourself, Mrs. McAllister. People are starting to wonder which side you're on." After he left, the tension in the store eased slightly. James Jenkins cleared his throat awkwardly. "He shouldn't have mentioned Tom like that," he said. "That was out of line." Claire nodded stiffly, not trusting herself to speak. "But you should be careful," Jenkins continued. "The Comanche can't be trusted. They might have left you alone this time, but next time—" "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Jenkins," Claire said formally, "but I can take care of myself." She finished her shopping quickly after that, paying Margaret and loading her supplies into the wagon. As she climbed onto the seat, she noticed several people watching her from the boardwalk, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. The ride home seemed longer than usual. Claire's mind was full of the confrontation in the store, of Sanders' hateful words and the looks on people's faces. She had lived among these people her whole life, had married one of their sons, had grieved with them. Now, because of one act of compassion, she had become an outsider. As her cabin came into view, Claire felt a knot in her chest loosen. This was home now, not the town, not the community she'd grown up in, but this small piece of land that she and Tom had claimed as their own. Here, at least, she could be herself. The next few days passed quietly. Claire threw herself into her work, rising earlier and working later, as if physical exhaustion could quiet the turmoil in her mind. She repaired fences, tended her small garden, checked on her dwindling herd. The drought showed no signs of breaking, and she began to worry about water for the cattle. One afternoon, a week after her trip to town, Claire was checking the creek when she heard hoofbeats again. This time, she did grab her rifle before looking to see who approached. It was Red Elk, but he wasn't alone. Behind him rode two other warriors and, to Claire's surprise, Naki. The girl's face lit up when she saw Claire, and she urged her pony forward eagerly. "Claire," Naki called, waving, "we come to visit." Claire lowered her rifle, smiling despite herself. "I see that. Welcome back." Red Elk rode up beside his sister, his face more relaxed than Claire had ever seen it. "Naki would not stop asking to see you," he explained, "and I promised to bring meat." Claire noticed then that several rabbit carcasses hung from one warrior's saddle, along with what looked like a young deer. "You didn't need to do that," she said, though she was grateful. Her own hunting had been poor lately, the game driven away by the drought. "A promise is a promise," Red Elk said simply. He dismounted and helped Naki down from her pony. The girl ran to Claire and, to her surprise, threw her arms around her in a warm embrace. "I miss you," Naki said, her face alight with genuine happiness. Claire hugged her back, touched by the girl's affection. "I missed you too. You look well." "I am strong now," Naki declared proudly. "Red Elk says your medicine good medicine." Claire glanced at Red Elk, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. "I'm glad it helped." They moved to the cabin, where the two warriors with them immediately set about preparing the game they had brought. One built a fire in the yard, while the other began skinning the rabbits with practiced efficiency. "They will cook," Red Elk explained. "It is their way of thanking you for helping Naki." Claire nodded, understanding this was about honor and reciprocity. "I'll make coffee," she offered, "and I have cornbread left from this morning." Inside the cabin, Naki chatted happily as Claire prepared the coffee. The girl seemed fascinated by everything: the quilt on Claire's bed, the books on her small shelf, the china cups that had been a wedding gift from Tom's mother. "You read these?" Naki asked, touching the spine of a book with reverent fingers. "Yes," Claire said. "That one's poetry. Do you read English?" Naki shook her head. "The missionary teach some of our children, not me." She looked wistful. "I would like to learn." "I could teach you," Claire offered impulsively, "if you visit again." Naki's face brightened. "Red Elk says we come again. He says—" She stopped abruptly, looking toward the door where her brother had appeared. "The meat is cooking," Red Elk announced. If he had heard their conversation, he gave no sign of it. They ate outside as the sun began to set, sitting around the fire in a circle that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago, a white woman and 4 Comanche sharing a meal as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The two warriors, whom Red Elk introduced as Running Horse and Swift Fox, were initially reserved, but as the meal progressed, they relaxed somewhat, occasionally joining the conversation in halting English or through Naki, who happily translated. "The drought is bad in your territory too?" Claire asked, addressing Red Elk, but including them all in her question. Red Elk nodded. "Many creeks dry. Game moves north. Our horses grow thin." "Same here," Claire sighed. "My cattle need water. I may have to sell some before they start dying." "There is a place," Red Elk said slowly, 2 days' ride west. A canyon with a spring that never fails. Even in the worst drought, water flows. Claire looked at him in surprise. "I've never heard of such a place." "White men do not know it," Red Elk replied. "It is sacred to my people, but I could show you. Your cattle would have water there." The offer stunned Claire. A sacred spring unknown to settlers, and Red Elk was willing to share its location with her. It was a gesture of trust that went beyond anything she had expected. "That's very generous," she said carefully, "but it's your people's place. I wouldn't want to intrude." Red Elk's eyes held hers. "You helped my sister when others would have harmed her. You speak with respect of our ways. The spring has water enough to share." Claire didn't know what to say. The offer could save her herd, maybe her ranch, but it also tied her more closely to Red Elk and his people, a connection that was already causing trouble for her in town. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Red Elk nodded, accepting her hesitation without offense. "The offer stands." As darkness fell, Naki yawned widely, trying to hide it behind her hand. Claire smiled, remembering that despite her spirit, the girl was still recovering her strength. "You're welcome to stay the night," Claire offered. "It's getting late to travel." Red Elk considered for a moment, then nodded. "We will camp here," he decided. "Leave at first light." Claire offered her cabin to Naki, but the girl insisted on staying with her brother and the other warriors. They set up a simple camp in Claire's yard, declining her offer of blankets with polite thanks. Before retiring to her cabin, Claire took Red Elk aside. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the meat, and for bringing Naki to visit. It means a lot." In the firelight, his face seemed softer, the stern lines relaxed. "She talks of you often. Says you have kind hands and brave heart." Claire smiled. "She's a special girl. You're fortunate to have each other." "Yes," Red Elk agreed. "After losing so many, the spirits left me one sister to care for." He looked toward where Naki was already curled up beside the fire, her breathing deep and even in sleep. "And perhaps new friends as well." The word friends hung in the air between them, carrying weight beyond its simple meaning. "I'd like that," Claire said softly. Red Elk's eyes returned to her face, studying her in the flickering light. "The necklace," he said, noticing it at her throat. "You wear it." Claire's hand went to the beads. "Every day since you gave it to me." Something shifted in Red Elk's expression, a softening, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "It was made with good thoughts," he said. Naki sang as she worked on it, songs of healing and strength. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received," Claire told him honestly. They stood in silence for a moment, the night sounds of the prairie surrounding them, crickets chirping, the occasional hoot of an owl, the soft nickering of horses. "Rest well, Claire McAllister," Red Elk said finally. "We will speak again before I leave." In her cabin, Claire lay awake for a long time, listening to the soft sounds of the Comanche camp outside. Her mind was full of contradictions, the warmth she felt in Red Elk's presence set against the cold hostility she'd faced in town, the connection growing between them against the bloody history that separated their peoples. She thought of Tom, wondering what he would think of all this. Would he understand the path she was taking? Or would he feel betrayed by her friendship with the people he had fought? "I'm trying to do what's right, Tom," she whispered into the darkness. "I'm trying to find a way to live that does not continue the cycle of hatred." There was no answer, of course, just the night wind sighing around the cabin eaves, carrying the scent of sage and smoke from the dying fire outside. Morning came with the first hint of coolness in the air, a blessed relief from the relentless heat. Claire dressed quickly, and went outside to find Red Elk already awake, watching the sunrise with quiet contemplation. "You're up early," she said, coming to stand beside him. "I like this time," he replied. "When the world is between night and day, it feels balanced." Claire nodded, understanding what he meant. "Would you like coffee before you go?" "Yes," Red Elk said, turning to face her. "And I wish to speak with you about something." His serious tone made Claire pause. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong," he said carefully. "But I must tell you something. There is unrest among some of our young men. The drought makes tempers short, and there are rumors of white settlers pushing closer to our hunting grounds." Claire felt a chill despite the warming air. "Are you expecting trouble?" "I hope not," Red Elk said. "I have spoken for peace, but not all listen." He met her eyes directly. "If there is fighting, it may not be safe for you here, so close to our territory." "This is my home," Claire said firmly. "I'm not leaving it." Red Elk's expression softened. "I did not think you would, but I wanted to warn you." He hesitated, then added, "And to tell you that whatever happens, you are under my protection. No warrior from my village will harm you or your property." The declaration took Claire by surprise. "Why would you do that?" "You know why," Red Elk said simply. And somehow, she did. The growing connection between them, the respect and trust that had developed, it had created a bond that transcended the conflicts of their peoples. "Thank you," she said quietly. Red Elk nodded once, then glanced toward the camp, where the others were beginning to stir. "We should have that coffee now," he said, his tone lightening. "Naki will be disappointed if she does not get to say goodbye." They shared a simple breakfast around the rekindled fire, coffee, cornbread, and some of the leftover meat from the night before. Naki was full of questions about Claire's books, eager to learn even a few words of written English before they departed. "Next time," Claire promised, writing out the alphabet on a scrap of paper for the girl to take with her. "We'll start with these letters." All too soon, it was time for them to leave. The horses were saddled, the camp cleared away as if they had never been there. Naki hugged Claire tightly. "I come back soon," she promised. "Learn many letters." "I'll be waiting," Claire assured her, returning the embrace. Red Elk approached last after the others had mounted. "Think about the spring," he said. "Your cattle need water to survive this drought." "I will," Claire promised. He reached out then, his hand hovering near her face, before gently touching the necklace at her throat. "This looks right on you," he said softly, "as if it was always meant to be yours." The touch, brief as it was, sent warmth spreading through Claire's chest. "Thank you for bringing it, and for everything else." Red Elk held her gaze for a moment longer, something unspoken passing between them. Then he mounted his horse in that fluid motion that seemed effortless. "Until we meet again, Claire McAllister," he said, the formality of his words belied by the warmth in his voice. "Until then," she replied, raising her hand in farewell. Claire watched them ride away, Naki turning several times to wave enthusiastically. Only when they had disappeared from sight did she lower her hand and turn back to her cabin. Inside, she picked up the scrap of paper where she had written the alphabet for Naki. Beside it, she had drawn a simple picture of an eagle in flight. Beneath the drawing, she had written a single word, "friend." But as Claire looked at it now, she wondered if that word was still enough to describe what she felt when Red Elk was near. And she wondered, with a mixture of hope and fear, what that might mean for both their futures. 2 days after Red Elk and Naki left, Claire made her decision. Her cattle were suffering, growing thinner by the day as the drought tightened its grip on the land. The creek had dried to nothing more than damp mud, and the well was dropping dangerously low. If she didn't find water soon, she would lose everything. At dawn, she saddled her horse and packed supplies for a journey of several days. She wore Naki's necklace outside her blouse where it could be seen, and tucked the eagle carving into her saddlebag. Then she set out west, following the directions Red Elk had given her. The prairie stretched endlessly before her, the tall grass burned brown by the relentless sun. Claire rode steadily, stopping only to rest her horse and take sips from her dwindling water supply. By nightfall, she had covered considerable distance, but knew she was still at least a day's ride from the spring Red Elk had described. She made camp in a small grove of cottonwoods, grateful for their meager shade. As darkness fell, she built only the smallest of fires, mindful of Red Elk's warning about unrest among the tribes. Though he had promised her his protection, she knew that promise might not extend to warriors from other bands. The night passed quietly, but Claire slept lightly, one hand always near her rifle. At first light, she was up and moving again, pushing west toward the distant hills that had begun to appear on the horizon. The land changed gradually as she rode. The flat prairie gave way to rolling hills, and occasional outcroppings of rock broke the monotony of the landscape. By mid-afternoon, Claire found herself entering a maze of small canyons and gullies, each looking much like the next. Red Elk's directions now became crucial. Turn at the rock shaped like a bear's head. Follow the dry stream bed until it splits. Take the left fork, then look for 3 tall pines standing together. Claire followed each landmark carefully, grateful for Red Elk's precise instructions. Still, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, doubt crept in. Had she missed a turn? Taken the wrong fork? The consequences of getting lost out here, with her water nearly gone, would be dire. Just as anxiety began to tighten her chest, she rounded a bend and saw them, 3 pine trees standing like sentinels against the darkening sky. Relief washed over her. This was the final landmark. The hidden canyon should be just beyond. Sure enough, as she passed the pines, the land opened up before her. A narrow canyon, invisible until you were almost upon it, cut deeply into the earth. Claire urged her tired horse down the steep path that led into its depths. The change was immediate and startling. While the world above remained parched and brown, the canyon floor was a ribbon of green. Grass grew thick and lush along the banks of a clear stream that bubbled up from somewhere deep in the earth. Wildflowers dotted the grass with splashes of color, and the air felt noticeably cooler and moister. Claire dismounted, letting her horse drink from the stream. She knelt beside it herself, cupping the cold, sweet water in her hands and drinking deeply. It was the most delicious water she had ever tasted. Red Elk was right, she murmured, looking around the hidden paradise. This place is sacred. She made camp near the stream, gathering wood for a small fire. As darkness fell, the canyon came alive with the sounds of night creatures, frogs croaking, insects chirping, an owl calling from somewhere up the canyon walls. Claire sat by her fire, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. This place could save her ranch. If she could bring her cattle here, they would survive the drought. But it was a 2-day drive at least, and she would need help to move the herd. And there was another consideration. This was Comanche land, sacred to Red Elk's people. Could she in good conscience bring her cattle here without their explicit permission? Claire fell asleep pondering these questions, the gentle sound of the stream a lullaby in the darkness. She was awakened before dawn by the sound of horses. Many horses. Sitting up quickly, she reached for her rifle, heart pounding. Had someone followed her? Townsfolk? Hostile warriors? A figure appeared at the edge of her camp, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. Tall, proud, unmistakable. Red Elk, Claire breathed, lowering her rifle in relief. He stepped into the faint light of her dying fire. "I knew you would come," he said simply. "How did you find me?" Claire asked, getting to her feet. "I followed," Red Elk admitted. "Watched over you on the journey." He gestured to the rim of the canyon. "My men are above. I wanted to be sure you arrived safely." The thought of Red Elk secretly watching over her journey should have bothered Claire. Instead, she felt oddly touched by his concern. "Thank you," she said. "This place is everything you said it would be. The water is—" She struggled for words. "It feels blessed." Red Elk nodded. "Our ancestors have come here for many generations. The spring never fails, even in the worst drought." He looked around the canyon, his expression softening. "I knew you would understand its value." "I do," Claire said earnestly, "and I won't abuse your trust. I was thinking about bringing my cattle here, but I wanted to ask your permission first. This is your people's land." Red Elk's eyes returned to her face, studying her in the growing light. You could have brought them without asking. I gave you the location freely. But this place is sacred to you, Claire said. I respect that. I won't come here if you don't want me to. Something flickered in Red Elk's eyes, surprise perhaps, or approval. Few white people would show such respect, he said quietly. I'm not most white people, Claire replied, echoing the words she had spoken to him once before. No, Red Elk agreed, a hint of a smile touching his lips. You are not. He gestured around the canyon. You may bring your cattle here. There is water enough for all. Claire felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you. This will save my herd, maybe my ranch. The ranch is important to you, Red Elk observed, even though it brings you hardship. It was Tom's dream, Claire explained, sitting back down by the fire and motioning for Red Elk to join her. And it became mine too. I can't just abandon it. Red Elk sat across from her, cross-legged and straight-backed as always. You loved your husband very much. I did, Claire admitted. We were happy together. She poked at the fire with a stick, watching the embers glow. But he's gone now, and I'm still here, trying to figure out how to live in this world without him. I understand, Red Elk said softly. After my wife died, I thought the sun would never warm me again. Claire looked up, meeting his eyes across the fire. Does it? Warm you now? Some days, Red Elk replied, holding her gaze. More than before. They sat in companionable silence as the sky lightened, and the first birdsong filled the canyon. Claire made coffee on the revived fire, and they shared the simple breakfast she had packed. I will help you bring your cattle here, Red Elk said as they finished eating. My men and I. It will be easier with more hands. Claire stared at him in surprise. You would do that? Help a white settler move her cattle? I would help you, Red Elk corrected gently. Claire McAllister, who saved my sister's life, who respects our sacred places, who wears our beads around her neck. His eyes went to the necklace visible against her blouse. Who sees me as a man, not just a Comanche? Claire felt warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun or the coffee. I would be grateful for your help, she said softly. They left the canyon together, climbing back to the prairie where 4 Comanche warriors waited with their horses. Claire recognized Running Horse and Swift Fox among them. They nodded to her with what seemed like increased respect. The journey back to Claire's ranch took less time with Red Elk guiding them. They arrived as the sun was setting on the second day, the cabin a welcome sight after the long ride. We will rest tonight, Red Elk decided. Begin moving the cattle at dawn. Claire prepared a meal for all of them, grateful now for the size of her garden and the game Red Elk's warriors had caught along the way. As they ate around the fire in her yard, the strangeness of the situation struck her. A white woman and 5 Comanche warriors sharing food and planning to work together. It was something she could never have imagined a few months ago. After the meal, the warriors set up their camp as before. Red Elk lingered near the fire as the others settled for the night. Your sheriff and his men came looking for you yesterday, he said quietly, so the others wouldn't hear. Claire's head snapped up. Here? At my ranch? Red Elk nodded. We watched from the hills. They searched your cabin, then left. Why would they be looking for me? Claire wondered aloud. There have been raids, Red Elk said, his face grave. Not my people, but Kiowa from the north. 3 homesteads burned, some settlers killed. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. And they think I might be involved because of my connection to you. Yes, Red Elk confirmed. It is not safe for you in the White Town now. I haven't been to town in weeks, Claire said, but sooner or later I'll need supplies. She looked at Red Elk, troubled. What am I going to do? First we save your cattle, Red Elk said practically. Then we decide the rest. His calm confidence steadied her. You're right. One problem at a time. Red Elk reached out, his fingers lightly touching the beads at her throat. You have survived much already, Claire McAllister. You will survive this too. The touch, brief as it was, sent warmth spreading through Claire's body. She looked up at Red Elk, seeing in his eyes a reflection of what she was beginning to feel, a connection that defied the boundaries between their worlds. Good night, Red Elk, she said softly. Dream well, he replied, his voice equally soft. The next morning dawned clear and hot, promising another scorching day. Claire and the warriors were up with the sun, preparing to move the cattle. There were about 30 head left, less than half what she and Tom had started with, but still enough to build back if they survived the drought. Moving cattle was hard work under the best conditions. In this heat, with the animals already weak from thirst, it was grueling. But Red Elk and his men were skilled horsemen, and by midday they had the herd moving steadily westward. They made camp that night on the open prairie, the cattle bedded down under the watchful eyes of 2 warriors who took the first watch. Claire sat by the fire, exhausted but satisfied with their progress. "We should reach the canyon by tomorrow evening," Red Elk said, sitting beside her. "The cattle smell the water. They will move faster tomorrow." Claire nodded, too tired for much conversation. Red Elk seemed to understand, offering her a cup of coffee before moving to check on the horses. They were up before dawn the next day, eager to reach the canyon before the worst heat of the afternoon. The cattle did indeed move faster, driven by their thirst and the instinctive sense that water lay ahead. By late afternoon, the 3 pine trees came into view. Claire felt a surge of relief. They were almost there. But as they approached the final landmark, Red Elk suddenly raised his hand, signaling a halt. His body had gone tense, his eyes scanning the horizon. "What is it?" Claire asked, riding up beside him. "Dust," Red Elk said grimly, pointing to the north. "Riders coming fast." Claire squinted in the direction he indicated. Sure enough, a cloud of dust was visible, moving rapidly toward them. "Could be anyone," she said, but dread pooled in her stomach. "Not anyone," Red Elk disagreed. "Look." He handed her a small brass spyglass. Through the glass, Claire could make out the riders more clearly. At least a dozen men, all armed, and at their head, the unmistakable figure of Sheriff Wilson. "They've been tracking us," Claire realized aloud. "But how did they know where to find us?" "The water finder," one of the warriors said in halting English. "White man who knows springs. He guide them." Claire felt sick. Jackson Peters, known locally as the water finder, was the only settler who might know about the hidden canyon. He had made his living locating water sources for ranchers and homesteaders. If he had discovered the sacred spring and shared its location with the sheriff. "We need to move the cattle into the canyon now," Claire said urgently, "before they get here." Red Elk shook his head. "No time, they will be upon us before the herd is halfway down." He turned to his warriors, issuing rapid commands in their language. The men immediately spread out, taking defensive positions. "What are you doing?" Claire demanded. "We can't fight the sheriff and his men." "We will talk first," Red Elk assured her. "But we prepare for what may come." The riders were closing fast. Claire could now make out individual figures without the spyglass. Sheriff Wilson in the lead, followed by Bill Sanders, James Jenkins, and other men from town, all heavily armed. "Claire," Red Elk said, his voice suddenly gentle, "take the eagle carving I gave you. Ride for the canyon. My men will hold them here while you get away." "I'm not leaving you," Claire said firmly. "This is my fight too." Red Elk's eyes softened as he looked at her. "Brave woman," he murmured. "Then we face them together." The sheriff and his posse reined in about 50 yards away, forming a line across the prairie. For a long moment, nobody moved. Claire could feel the tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Sheriff Wilson rode forward alone, his rifle across his saddle. "Claire McAllister," he called, "step away from those savages and come over here. We're taking you home." Claire urged her horse forward to meet him halfway. Red Elk moved with her, staying at her side. "I am home, Sheriff," Claire replied loudly enough for all to hear. "Or on my way to it. These men are helping me move my cattle to water." "Water on Comanche land," the sheriff retorted, "while honest settlers are dying of thirst. And now we find you running cattle with the same Indians that have been raiding farms all across the territory." "Not the same Indians," Claire said firmly. "Red Elk's people have kept the peace. The raids were Kiowa from the north." "Indians are Indians," Bill Sanders shouted from the line. "And that one's the worst of the lot." He pointed at Red Elk. "Led the attack that killed the Peterson family 3 years back. Took their scalps himself." Red Elk's face remained impassive, but Claire felt him tense beside her. "That's a lie," she said coldly. Red Elk has been working for peace. Peace? Sanders spat on the ground. Tell that to your husband's ghost. The words hit Claire like a physical blow. She gripped her saddle horn tightly, fighting to keep her composure. Tom would want me to survive, she said steadily. And that's what I'm doing. My cattle need water. Red Elk offered to share a water source on his people's land. There's nothing wrong or disloyal in accepting that help. James Jenkins rode forward to join the sheriff. Claire, you're not thinking clearly, he said in what he probably thought was a reasonable tone. These savages have turned your head. Come back with us now, and all will be forgiven. Forgiven? Claire repeated incredulously. I've done nothing wrong, and I don't need your forgiveness, James Jenkins. You're consorting with the enemy, the sheriff said bluntly. That's enough for some folks to call it treason. Treason? Claire felt anger rising in her chest. For trying to save my ranch? For accepting help when it was offered? For taking his side against your own people, Sanders shouted. Claire looked from face to face among the posse. Men she had known all her life now looking at her with suspicion and hostility. I'm not taking sides, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm just trying to live, to find a way forward that doesn't involve more killing. There's only one way forward with Indians, Sanders declared, raising his rifle. And that's to put them in the ground where they belong. Bill, lower that gun, the sheriff ordered sharply. We're talking here. But Sanders was beyond listening, his face contorted with hatred as he aimed directly at Red Elk. This is for Tom McAllister and every other white man these devils have killed. Everything happened at once. Sanders fired. Red Elk's horse reared. Claire screamed. And then she was falling, a burning pain spreading across her shoulder. She hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. Above her, chaos erupted. Men shouting, horses whinnying, the crack of more gunfire. Then strong arms were lifting her, cradling her against a solid chest. Through a haze of pain, she looked up into Red Elk's face, his expression fierce with concern. Claire, he said urgently, where are you hit? Shoulder, she managed to gasp. Not bad. Around them, the gunfire had stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Claire became aware of the sheriff kneeling beside them, his face ashen. My God, Claire, he said hoarsely. Sanders never meant to hit you. Take your men and go, Red Elk commanded, his voice cold with rage. Now, before my warriors decide to take revenge. Claire turned her head enough to see the Comanche warriors, bows drawn and aimed at the posse. The settlers had their guns raised as well. One wrong move from either side would unleash a bloodbath. We're not leaving Claire with you, Jenkins protested. It's my choice, Claire said through gritted teeth, the pain in her shoulder intensifying. And I choose to go with Red Elk. Claire, the sheriff began. She has spoken, Red Elk cut him off. The woman stays with me. Take your men and leave this place. Do not follow us. Something in his voice, absolute authority mixed with barely controlled fury, seemed to finally penetrate the sheriff's understanding. Lower your weapons, men, Wilson ordered. We're pulling back. Sheriff, you can't be serious, Sanders protested. I said we're pulling back, the sheriff repeated firmly. Claire's chosen her path, and you've done enough damage for one day, Bill Sanders. With obvious reluctance, the posse began to withdraw. The sheriff was the last to leave, looking back at Claire with a mixture of concern and resignation. If you ever change your mind, he said quietly, Broken Creek will still be there. I won't, Claire replied with certainty. After they had ridden away, Red Elk gently carried Claire to a shady spot beneath one of the pine trees. The warriors moved the cattle toward the canyon entrance, leaving one man to keep watch for the posse's return. Red Elk carefully examined Claire's wound. The bullet had torn through the flesh of her upper arm, painful but not life-threatening. You were lucky, he said, cleaning the wound with water from his canteen, a few inches to the right. But it wasn't, Claire said, wincing as he worked. And I'm still here. Red Elk tore strips from his own shirt to bind the wound. His hands were gentle despite their strength, his touch careful as he wrapped the makeshift bandage around her arm. Why did you do that? He asked quietly as he worked. Step in front of me? I didn't think, Claire admitted. I just couldn't let him shoot you. Red Elk's hands stilled for a moment. He looked into her eyes, his own dark with emotion. You risked your life for mine. Yes, Claire said simply. I did. Something shifted in Red Elk's expression then, a softening, a vulnerability she had never seen before. No one has done such a thing for me since your wife, Claire finished for him. Red Elk nodded, resuming his work on her bandage. Her name was Morning Star, he said softly. She would have liked you. The simple statement, offered like a precious gift, brought tears to Claire's eyes. I wish I could have known her. When the bandage was secure, Red Elk helped Claire to her feet. Can you ride? He asked. We should reach the canyon before dark. I can ride, Claire assured him, though her shoulder throbbed painfully. Red Elk whistled for her horse, then helped her mount, his hands steady and strong at her waist. Before he let go, he looked up at her, his face solemn. Claire McAllister, he said, today you chose a path that cannot be unchanged. Your people may never accept you again. I know, Claire replied, thinking of the faces of the men from town, the accusations they had hurled. But it was my choice to make. Red Elk nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes, then let us go to the water. The descent into the canyon was slow and careful, with the cattle picking their way down the steep path single file. By the time they reached the canyon floor, the sun was setting, painting the rock walls in shades of gold and crimson. The cattle moved immediately to the stream, drinking deeply of the sweet water. Claire watched them with satisfaction despite the pain in her arm. They would survive now. At least that much of her dream remained intact. Red Elk and his men set up camp near the stream, building a fire as darkness fell. Claire sat beside it, exhausted from the day's events, her wounded arm held carefully against her body. You should rest, Red Elk said, bringing her a cup of tea he had brewed with herbs from a small pouch. This will help with the pain. Claire accepted the cup gratefully. Thank you for everything. Red Elk sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body in the cooling night air. What will you do now? He asked after a moment of comfortable silence. Claire sipped the tea, considering the question. I don't know, she admitted. I can't go back to Broken Creek, not after today. You could stay here, Red Elk suggested, with your cattle. The canyon is large enough. For how long? Claire asked. Eventually I'll need supplies, contact with other people. Red Elk was quiet for a moment, looking into the fire. There is another possibility, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. You could come with me, to my village. Claire's heart skipped a beat. As what? A white woman living among the Comanche. Would your people accept that any more than mine accepted you? Some would not, Red Elk acknowledged. At first, but you saved Naki's life. You respected our sacred places. You took a bullet meant for me. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. And you would come not just as any white woman, but as my wife, if you wished it. The words hung in the air between them, momentous and irreversible. Claire felt as though she stood on the edge of a cliff, about to step into empty air. Your wife? She repeated softly. Red Elk nodded, his expression solemn but his eyes warm as they held hers. Among my people, it is not uncommon for a man to wait a year after losing a spouse before seeking another. It has been 3 since Morning Star walked the spirit path, and in that time, no woman has touched my heart. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing the necklace at her throat. Until you. Claire felt tears welling in her eyes. Red Elk, She hesitated, overwhelmed by the rush of emotions. I don't know what to say. Say what is in your heart, Red Elk replied simply. That is all I ask. Claire took a deep breath, searching her feelings. The connection she had felt with this man almost from the beginning, growing stronger with each meeting. The respect that had developed between them, the trust, and yes, the attraction that made her pulse quicken when he was near. But there were other considerations too, the vastly different worlds they came from, the hostility they would face from both sides, the life she would be leaving behind. I care for you, she said honestly. More than I thought possible after Tom died. But marriage, it's such a big step. It is, Red Elk agreed. I do not ask for an answer tonight, only that you consider it. He took her hand gently in his. Whatever you decide, you have a place with my people. I have already spoken with the elders. They will accept you for what you did for Naki, if nothing else. Claire felt a weight lift from her shoulders. At least she had somewhere to go, somewhere she would be safe. Thank you, she said, squeezing his hand. I will think about it. They sat together by the fire as the night deepened around them, hands still joined, each lost in their own thoughts. The pain in Claire's shoulder had subsided to a dull throb, eased by Red Elk's herbal tea. In the days that followed, Claire's wound began to heal. The cattle thrived on the lush grass and clear water of the hidden canyon. Red Elk and 2 of his warriors remained with her, while the others returned to the village to report what had happened. Claire found herself watching Red Elk as he moved about the camp, the grace of his movements, the quiet strength in his hands, the rare smile that transformed his solemn face. She noticed the gentle way he treated his horse, the respect he showed to the land around them, the patience with which he explained his people's customs to her, and she thought about his proposal, marriage to a Comanche warrior, a life among his people, learning their ways, becoming part of their world. It was nothing she had ever imagined for herself, and yet... One evening, about a week after they had arrived at the canyon, Claire walked along the stream, enjoying the coolness of the air near the water. Red Elk joined her, matching his pace to hers. Your arm is better, he observed. You move it more freely. Yes, Claire agreed. Your medicine works well. They walked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the gurgle of the stream and the distant lowing of the cattle. I've been thinking, Claire said finally, stopping to face him, about what you asked me. Red Elk's expression remained calm, but she saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Hope, perhaps, or apprehension. And? He prompted gently when she didn't continue. Claire took a deep breath. I was raised to believe that your people were savages, enemies to be feared and fought, and you were taught that white settlers were greedy invaders who couldn't be trusted. She looked directly into his eyes. We both lost people we loved to that hatred. Red Elk nodded, his face solemn. Many on both sides have died. But then Naki came to my door, Claire continued, and instead of seeing an enemy, I saw a sick girl who needed help. And when you came looking for her, instead of seeing just another white settler, you saw a woman who had helped your sister. The spirits guided us, Red Elk said softly, to see with new eyes. Claire nodded, feeling the rightness of his words. Maybe that's why all this happened. Maybe we're meant to show that there can be another way, not just fighting and killing, but understanding. Respect. Love, Red Elk added quietly, the word hanging in the air between them. Yes, Claire acknowledged, her voice barely above a whisper. Love. Red Elk reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with infinite gentleness. Is that your answer, Claire McAllister? Claire looked up at him, this man who had been her enemy and was now so much more. She thought of the life that awaited her if she accepted, strange and challenging, but also rich with possibility. And she thought of what they might accomplish together, bridging 2 worlds that had been divided by blood and hatred for too long. Yes, she said, her voice growing stronger with certainty. My answer is yes, Red Elk. I will be your wife. Joy transformed Red Elk's face, the stern lines softening, his dark eyes warming like the prairie after a long winter. He took her hands in his, handling her injured arm with care. My people have a saying, he told her. When 2 rivers join, they make a stronger current. Together we will be that stronger current, Claire. Together we will find a new path. As the sun set behind the canyon walls, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Red Elk bent his head and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, respectful yet filled with promise, sealing the bond between them as surely as any ceremony. Claire knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be those on both sides who would never accept their union, who would see it as betrayal. But in that moment, with Red Elk's arms around her and the sacred waters flowing nearby, she felt a peace she had not known since before Tom died. 2 weeks later, Claire stood outside a Comanche lodge, dressed in a deerskin dress that Naki had helped make, adorned with beads and porcupine quills. The eagle feather necklace hung at her throat, and her hair was braided with strips of red cloth. Red Elk waited for her by the central fire of the village, dressed in his finest regalia. Around them stood the members of his tribe, some curious, some approving, a few openly hostile. But Naki bounced with excitement, and the village elders had given their blessing. As Claire walked toward her future husband, she thought of Tom. "I hope you understand," she whispered to his memory. "I'm not forgetting you, but I'm choosing life, a different life than we planned, but life all the same." She thought she felt a warm breeze touch her cheek, like a gentle hand offering a blessing. And then she was standing before Red Elk, taking his outstretched hands, beginning the ceremony that would join their lives. "Two rivers," she murmured for his ears alone, "one current." Red Elk's eyes shone with an emotion that needed no words in any language. "One current," he agreed, "flowing forward together." And as the sun set on the prairie, painting the sky in brilliant fire, Claire McAllister became something new. Not just a white settler, not just a rancher's widow, but a bridge between worlds. A woman of fire, just as Red Elk had named her that first day. Fire enough to warm two hearts that had been cold with grief for too long. Fire enough to light a path where none had existed before. Fire enough to burn away the hatred of the past and forge something new and precious from its ashes. A love as vast and enduring as the prairie itself.